Welcome, you guys. Welcome to Heal Black Joy podcast. Hi, I'm Lola Troy, your host and curator of Heal Black Joy, the learning platform for our community to heal our Black joy with tangible and attainable programs for the mind, body, soul, relationships, and businesses. In today's conversation, this entire month, we have been focusing on healing from valid traumas that we don't touch on often, but we experience all the time. Work trauma and grind culture is the topic for tonight's conversation. Our guest for tonight is going to be none other than Miss Heather Archer. She is a certified life coach with specialties in sound healing, hypnotherapy, yoga, and reiki. Her life's mission is to live a liberated life while helping her community to thrive by centering wellness at work and beyond. She does this through hosting workshops, retreats, and nature-based events that center healing and wellness for stressed out professionals. Heather weaves her academic and organizational background with her work as a healer and wellness coach to create a transformational learning experience for you on your journey to thriving at work despite the high demands of your business or your job. Heather's first book, The Grind Culture Detox, is now available for presale and will become available to the public on June 14th this year, you guys. So in a few weeks, The Grind Culture Detox is going to be available wherever books are sold. You can learn more about her work by visiting her website, www.thrivingwithheather.com. I'm going to get her in. Hi, my dear.
Hi.
How
What
are
an amazing
you?
intro. I'm pretty good. How are you today?
I am great. I am wonderful. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you because we got to
Same.
get into it, lady. I tell you, we have got to get into this.
It's wild. It's wild out here. It's wild out here, you know?
Oh man. This whole month we've been talking about different types of trauma that we experience all the time, but we don't really talk about it. So the first week of our series was spiritual trauma. So we talked about spiritual trauma. We also talked about friendship trauma on last week. This week, we're going to be talking about work trauma and the grind detox and just grind culture. And next week, we're going to be talking about financial trauma because we experience those things as well. So, Heal Black Joy Tribe, share this out because it's going to be a wonderful conversation on tonight. I want to give a disclaimer before we dive in because when you're dealing with trauma, some of this information will be triggering. If you need professional help when it comes to trauma, we have resources of therapists that we can refer you to. My Heal Black Joy Tribe is full of therapists, certified, licensed therapists. So we can definitely, get those resources out to you. So first off, work trauma is a hot topic these days in our community because brothers and sisters are identifying their worth and realizing that they are experiencing trauma on the job. Work trauma can consist of job insecurity. We saw this during the pandemic, organizational restructures, mergers, layoffs, work overload, having work piled onto them, something that was not consistent with when they got hired, just everybody's like doing everybody's job now. Bullying, harassment. That's a big one. That's a big one. Getting bullied by your managers or colleagues, threats, sexual, verbal, psychological harassment, dealing with difficult customers, threats, and stressful situations. And I want to talk about something in particular. First off, I saw this video on TikTok, and as a woman, as a sister, it bothered me. It was a sister. She had 2 or 3 degrees. She had just got promoted for her job. She was sobbing because she was in a job with leadership, and instead of them asking her for her expertise, they wanted her to take notes.
Mm. Been there, done that. I
I
could have
could
made a
so
TikTok about
identify with it. You said been there, done that. I'm sure some of our Heal Black Joy Tribe members can identify with that. Let's get into it.
it. Yes. Woo. Yeah, that all the things you mentioned, those are so real and they hit home. And one thing I've learned about this whole workplace trauma journey is that there's a lot of folks that aren't talking about it. There's not a lot of resources. Like we're now getting into that point where we've been pushed to the edge of like, you know what? We do respect our humanity enough to ask for more and to demand more. But there's hasn't been a lot out there. But one thing I have noticed is that the folks that are putting in a lot of the work around workplace trauma right now are Black women. And a lot of that time, or people from marginalized communities, and it's because when we think about the culture of work and the culture of like the corporate structure, a lot of that's been based on white male privilege. And so, if you're not fitting into that narrative, you're more likely to be exposed to that level of trauma. And I'm just like really happy that you're creating and cultivating this space to not only talk about the trauma and unpack it, because we gotta actually acknowledge the hurt, but then
I'm having
also
a hard
making.
time hearing you just a little bit.
Sorry. Um, is that better?
That's much better.
Okay, cool. These little, I tried to be all like, I tried to be all high tech with these headphones, but they're not working for me.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yes. Um, Hello?
I can hear you now.
Hmm. Okay, I can hear you now too. All right, cool. But yeah, I'm just happy that you're cultivating spaces not only to talk about the trauma, but also to like move into that space of joy. Because it can be hard, and it's a muscle that we have to cultivate in this society with all this stuff being thrown at us.
Absolutely. Let me
Mhm.
ask you a question. How do you feel like the corporate world treats us, our community, black people? Is it fair to say that the corporate world wasn't really made? Like you said, we've been marginalized since day one. Do you think that corporate America had us in mind?
Yeah, they had us in mind to be producers, to
Woo!
them, they had us in mind all right, but not to necessarily empower, like to be empowered to be like decision makers in, the workspace. That wasn't something that they were kind of expecting when they created this system.
Mm,
But
mm,
that's the
mm,
thing,
mm.
like these structures really need us, and they need our not just our labor, but our creative intellect. Like, yeah. And so they've spent a lot of time actually benefiting and profiting off of that. And now it's like, okay, we're not just going to give you all of our labor and all of our creativity and all of our joy anymore. We're into this system. We're not doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I remember when you say profiting off of us, I remember because I'm a consultant. I work in the healthcare industry. And
Mm.
as a training consultant, I went into a very well-known hospital institution here, one of the largest. And I was the lead trainer on a project.
Mm.
And in the history of that hospital, that project was in compliance to doing everything right above 95% within 2 weeks of going live with the implementation. That had
Wow.
never been done at this particular hospital organization, right? And then 3 weeks later, a guy who was my boss, who had become my boss maybe a month prior to this project ending, so he got the notoriety for the project. But 3 weeks later, he walked me into his office and he said, "You know what, Lola?" He was just like, "You did an awesome job on, this project. You've made us a lot of money, and, we are in compliance. It's never been done, in the history of this hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to tell you that you are not really a good fit for this organization."
Oh, wow.
And
I'm
I
so sorry.
sat back and I looked at him. I said, well, what exactly does that mean, sir? What exactly does that mean? And he said, after, we've come to some conclusions in that you're not the best fit for this particular organization.
Mm.
And in my Black self,
Mm.
I was so mortified. I was so hot and so mad because not only did I overwork myself, not only was I grinding,
Mm-hmm.
I slept on the floor at the hospital some nights because I was training and taking meetings in the daytime. And at night, I was going live with the people, on the floor and working overtime, not seeing my child,
Mm.
not eating properly, not sleeping properly. It was round the clock. And I too, in those leadership meetings, when I would bring something up that would affect the project, I would say, hello, can you guys hear me? Am I on mute? They would completely ignore me.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment when he said, you're not a good fit for the company, I will never forget those words, because when I stepped away from the organization, that was the best thing he could have ever done for me. Because what it did was it told me, you're right, I am not a good fit for a company like yours.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, I have not only a work ethic, I have compassion for people. I'm a person that, wants to be aligned with things and people and structures and organizations that don't treat people that way.
Mm. And you got lots of love coming from Tulip. I think it's Tulip
Tulip
Love.
Love. Oh yeah.
From
Oh
New York.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I'm telling you, we have experienced this, and it's like, what do we do, Heather? What do we do in those moments when, how do we find normalcy in a space that wasn't created for us, only to be a worker bee?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first off is to understand that you are, and it's a harsh truth. A lot of times we've been in these companies that have called us family. Oh, we're like family. We're part of the family. We're doing it for the family. And it's all family until it's time for you to go. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And this is not just a white people problem. I've been in all Black organizations and I've seen the same stuff go down. And that's the hardest part. That's the coldest part for me, is knowing that, oh dang, this goes beyond. I can't even just say, okay, this person's white, or it's not even that. It's deeper than that. It's a level of consciousness and like treatment, humanity, respecting humanity. And we've been poisoned by this society for so long to value each other based upon what we're able to produce and what we can get from each other, that it's, a lot of us, it doesn't matter if we're, what color we are sometimes, it goes deeper than that. And I think the first thing is just understanding the boundary of, I am an employee. It doesn't, you can love your job. You can love your job and I am an employee. What's that manual say? I'm going to take my breaks, because I've been in that same boat where I did, I've pushed my well-being all the way to the side for some company and to be seen as valuable. And for me, a big thing was, it was more about me being a female leader. Like, I was taking over a role where they were used to male leadership. So, and, coming in as a mom too, a breastfeeding mom, feeling weird about, like, okay, I'm in this promotion, I got to prove myself. But then people are saying such this, that, and the third, because I'm taking breaks. I just came off of maternity leave. I have a little one. I need to go pump. I'm taking more breaks than other people to do that, all that stuff. And when it was all said and done, for me, it was, I had deferred and not taken a lot of my sick leave or a lot of like my time off. I had felt really bad about that. And when I finally decided to leave the company after all that time of putting in all these long hours, they were able to not comp me my time. How like sometimes you get your paid time off, right?
Right.
You get cashed out. They like did a loophole because they called them sick days as opposed to PTO or whatever. And so they were able to like not cash me out for none of that. I was like, dang, it's like that. And I was like, okay, hard lesson, but I'm going to take my time off, Because it's not, at the end of the day, if you're not caring for yourself, people are going to look at that. And here's the cold part. They're going to see the way you treat yourself and be like, okay, that's how she wants to be treated. And I had to realize too, I'm like, people see me not giving myself breaks and working myself into the ground. Why should they respect me? Am I respecting myself? And having those hard conversations and dealing with my own trauma, like, how did I get to this point? Was a big part. It's a big part. It's like, okay, I got to start putting myself first. And
I want to segue into that. How do we recognize when we're being traumatized or abused at work? Because what is that rooted in? Is that rooted in self-worth? Because what happens is we've already had trauma. Growing up, we've had trauma. So we recognize, we might not recognize abuse. We normalize it. And then we get into these spaces where people still treat us in the same manner that we recognize our trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so it's familiar to us, so we stay in it. Is that rooted like in self-worth or not having self-worth, or what is that really rooted in?
It's definitely it goes beyond the person or the individual. Like, no person is on an island, right? We're all impacted by each other. We're in this ecosystem together. And this system, has been designed for only a few to win in it, and for the rest to feed into it, right? And not necessarily profit off of it, but to be these worker bees, And so it's understanding like, oh, dang, I'm in this system. So that means I've been harmed. Naturally, I've picked up some stuff that has lowered my sense of self-worth. And so I need to understand that I've been swimming in this poisonous water, have grace with myself, number one, because the first thing we want to do is, I know for me, when I started unpacking my trauma, I was like, I just want to fix myself, and that was my trauma and wanting to be perfect, right? And it's like, oh, I got to fix all this stuff about me. It's like, no, like, it's natural to be harmed. It's natural to go through trauma. Be gentle with myself. Give myself time to grieve.
Right.
Big grieving process. Take a personal day, doing these kinds of things. So it's a personal, like, self-worth issue, and it's a systemic thing. It's a both and the systemic thing helps you to not feel so bad about yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because that's important too. Like, it was designed for us to be this way. And now we're working on a new design in the next coming years,
Yeah. In that moment when you recognize it and you make that decision, like, hey, I want to cut ties, like, you could literally leave your job and still be abused or not giving yourself grace in other areas. Like, how do you pivot from that? Because you can say, you know what, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to leave my job and I know my self-worth now, I'm walking away. But you get home and let's say you don't have boundaries with your spouse, or you don't have boundaries, with your family members. And it's like, you still got to work on those things that had you in a scenario where you were in a space where people did not respect your boundaries, or just throw work at you. And you're like, no, I got to go home. It's 5:30. I got kids to feed. I got things that I need to do for myself. I'm not taking PTO because I'm too scared, because, my job might be compromised if I take a day. You know what I mean?
That is a really, really, really good question. And it's something that folks that I've worked with who have done my Grind Culture Detox program, they have, I have a one person, she's doing it for the second time. And so she was mentioning, she was like, the first time I was really working on my work boundaries, setting boundaries at work. And she's like, now I understand that that's easy for me to do. Now the hard part is setting boundaries with friends, setting boundaries with my partner, and there's levels. All I got to say to that is there's levels to this, there are levels, there are layers. The work is never over. Healing isn't linear. It's a journey. Buckle up, It's
a journey. And when you start peeling back those layers, it doesn't matter what part of the layer is, whether it's your career, your family, your health, yourself. Once you start understanding and understanding that concept of boundaries, then you will start looking at all of those areas in your life like, oh my God, I didn't have boundaries here, or I didn't have boundaries here. and then you want to set super duper rigid boundaries, right?
Yep.
Because it's like, you're not getting ready to play with me anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we start that healing process? If we, there's some of us that don't have the ability or the option to just walk away from a job that is not necessarily in our best interest, right? So how do we start the healing process while in that same space of working?
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everybody's journey looks different for them, and some folks like the 9 to 5 or they like their jobs. They're just
Right.
wanting to learn some skills to turn off sometimes, and so I think it's first of all like being okay with what it is you want, naming what it is you want, and being okay with it. A lot of times this issue around grind culture, it's killed our imagination. It's made us afraid to dream. We just have kind of stayed in this box, and we don't want to, we don't want to ruffle too many feathers. We're just trying to, get the paycheck, or, just we're trying to like make it through. There's already so much going on in life, and so like understanding that that's a real reality. And also that's why I love working with folks who run companies and run organizations. I like working with the leadership because there's a lot of power. There's like power and positionality. And if you can get a leader of an organization to see and name grind culture, the culture of the organization shifts automatically. I was that person who thought I needed to do X, Y, and the third, and I was traumatizing staff. I didn't realize it, but because I was in my own level of perfectionism and workaholism. I was so much in that cycle. I was perpetuating that on my team. So I saw the way I did that. I've worked under bosses where that's been the case. I've consulted with people to be like, you need to calm the F down and take a break because
Right. Right. Let's get into this grind culture. Rihanna said it. Our good sis Rihanna said it in her song, work, 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 work. We were all in love with the song because even though it sounded good, the beat was good. We love our good sis Ree. Subconsciously, though, we as a culture identify with working. We don't talk about resting, but we will get to work. We will go to work, right? Even when you were talking about leadership and how you like working with leadership, my girlfriend, we were talking about this today because I was telling her that I was going to have this conversation with you tonight. And she told me a story about Oprah. And she said Oprah was working with, I guess, her top producer. Her producer was at her home and they were working on a show. And, the producer left, she thought she left that night. They had worked into the wee hours of the night. Oprah went to sleep. She woke up the next morning. She's getting ready to leave. She comes outside and her producer is asleep in her yard.
Oh, dang.
Right? So in that moment, what she realized is like, I am working my staff, the most trusted people of my staff, to death. What does that say about me as a leader? So she made an executive decision to change the culture of Harpo Productions.
Wow.
In that moment. With that being said, grind culture in 3 words, describe what that really is for us that don't think that we're doing it.
I would first say it's an addiction. So that's like, you got to come at it from like any addiction. Like if you're trying to stop smoking or, maybe you're trying to cut out sweets, right? So there's sometimes you're going to, you're not going to always cut out sweets for life, right? But you might need to curb it back a little bit sometimes. So like understanding that it's an addiction is number one. Understand that it has to do with production. It's an addiction to production. Okay. And then also understanding, I would say inequity would be the 3rd word, because everybody's going to be impacted by the system of grind culture. People's lives across the board are more miserable because of it. Like if we could get out of this paradigm of living and working, it would make our lives better across the board. However, the folks that are going to be the most damaged by grind culture are the ones that are going to be the members of the most oppressed groups in society, because we have been told implicitly and explicitly that we are less than for whatever reason, whether it be race, gender, sexual preference, ability, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And so for, folks who are who have been othered, how are we going to adapt in the working world, right? We made it. A lot of times we're the only ones that are at some of these tables. Thankfully, it's starting to change, but look at how far we've had to come and look at the fight we still have, and so the ways we will cut ourselves, bend ourselves, twist ourselves in order to fit into this capitalist structure so that we don't, because we don't want to be in poverty. We know how that feels like we're not trying to do that again. And so it's this trauma, this wheel of trauma, though, of like, I can't slow down,
Mm-hmm.
I got to keep working. Like, oh, I'm feeling guilty for resting. I'm feeling guilty for being a human being, doing human stuff. I feel guilty for that. There's something off about that,
Yeah. Yeah. It takes me back to, I know I've heard it. I'm sure our Heal Black Joy tribe has heard it from our parents or our grandparents. And Joe Morton did it in Scandal as he was Kerry Washington's father. And he said, you got to work twice as hard. Why? That was a real big scene in that show because we heard that all of our lives. We have to work twice as hard in order to get even half of the things that our white counterparts can get or achieve when it comes to working. So we've heard that our whole entire life. So do you believe grind culture is rooted or tied to a slave mentality?
Definitely. I definitely do. And I think we all do on some level. I have a friend, they actually used the job they used to go to. They worked at this retail company that will remain nameless, but they used to call it the plantation. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to the plantation today. It's just like, okay, like we've heard these little things around, work and slavery. Now, obviously, the system of chattel slavery was brutal. And I'm not comparing what we're dealing with today to that. However, the energy that was behind the system of chattel slavery is still alive and well today. It just manifests differently. There's a lot of research that's emerging. So I write about it in my book. I've gotten a lot of my research from the New York Times 1619 Project. They have episode 2 of their podcast is called The Economy That Slavery Built. I highly recommend it. It's like super foundational for like, all right, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the systems and practices used on the plantation. And they attribute a lot of the practices and policies in multinational corporations today to actually being piloted and tried out first in the plantation system, with the way that they wanted to get the most production for the least cost and all of that stuff. And then we just never had a chance to heal from that, like where were the healing circles after, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, where was the therapy then? That wasn't a thing, so we just kept it and we kept working throughout the whole time, it just manifested differently.
And when you think about other places, like the same girlfriend that we were having this conversation today, because I was telling her, and she was like, oh my God, this is a great subject to talk about. She was looking into, having a child, and she was talking about how in other countries, I mean, just to think about, how they take, I don't know what they call it. I can't think of the name that they call it in other countries, but they take that break. What is it called?
Paid family leave, or
well, not just paid family leave. I'm gonna talk about that in a second, but just the break, that everyday break that they take. A siesta, is it a siesta? They take a siesta, right? We don't do that in America, right? In other countries, they take a break in the middle of the day. But she was talking about how in other countries where you get a full year off with your child and they're paying you, full, I can't remember exactly what country it was, but they give you your full salary for a year. And then after that year, if you still remain out with your child, then it goes down from 100% down to like 75. and then it kind of trickles down to maybe 50% until you go back to work. And then you think about the policies that are set up in America for a mother who wants to take off for maternity leave. And we literally had to fight for the maternity leave laws that we have now, and they're not even that great.
Yeah, we don't have nothing on the books nationally. It depends on the state that you're in at this point, as to what are entitled to anything, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, I am so in support of that. In another life, I was an early childhood educator, and actually was an early childhood professor, and just the amount of research around the first 5 years of a child's life. I mean, come on, what are we doing? We're investing it's an investment you make in our future, but then you got to see people, you got to see the humanity in folks, in order to make those policies. You know what I'm saying? If you're not caring about that, then no,
And then when you think about it, I remember when it's crazy. I know it wasn't a blessing financially, but it was a blessing for me in the sense that my daughter was born 11 days after September 11th. So during that time, I had lost my job. I was in a brand spanking new marriage. I had my child 11 days after September 11th, and there were no jobs to be found.
Really?
And although not at all, you couldn't buy a job at that point. And although it was such a catastrophe going on in America, with, the planes hitting the towers and hitting the other places. And we thought that the world was just kind of turning upside down at that time. For me as a mother, I was home with my child for her first year. Now, if I had had a job, I probably would not have had the opportunity to be home with my daughter. So I sympathize and empathize with new moms, because at that 6-week mark, or after that 8-week mark, they're literally going through it mentally and emotionally, because they got to make a decision about having to go back to work, not having enough money to, pay for daycare. What person am I going to entrust my newest gift, the thing that I, that's nearest and dearest to my heart? Do I trust somebody to take care of my child? That's an emotional roller coaster ride for new moms.
It really is. It really, really is. Yeah, I'm still working on reclaiming the time that, I really wish I had more time. I had to fight for my maternity leave. I was able to get 2.5 months. That was a fight. They tried to give me 2 weeks the first time around. I was like, what? Looked in the laws, and they had every right, I was like, damn, but I was able to negotiate. But I was like, dang, I'm worried about bringing in my son into this world. I want to get ready. I'm not trying to be haggling for time off right now, But then, I asked my mom about her experience. She had to go to work 2 weeks after she gave birth to me,
Right.
It was, she had 2 jobs. She had to get it done, So, seeing wow, there's progress happening. And it's why is this a systemic intergenerational issue that we're dealing with, and it goes back. We gotta go back to the foundation of the way our country started.
And that's very traumatic in the sense that you're being pulled away from the thing that you love, and then you got to go back to a job that didn't even want to honor the fact that you want to stay home. You got to look at these people and work for these people every single day. And then they're looking at you like, why you don't look happy to be here? Because I'm not. Because I'm not.
Yeah.
You played me. No, absolutely not.
I pushed it. I was like, once they gave me the time off, I was a little mad. I had to haggle for it. But I was like, dang, legally they didn't even have to do that. I'm like, damn,
Yeah. This is such a great conversation, in the sense that I know, and this is coming up in the chat, where people are, you know, identifying with those things as mothers, as Black women, as Black men that we've experienced in the workforce. Last week I spoke to our good brother Damon Avenger. He talked to us about friendship trauma, and he said something that I just was like, wow, I so identified with it. And a lot of people in the chat also identified with it. But he said he was in this grind culture. He's a New Yorker. He was grinding it out, has a family. He said the reason why he never took off days, he admitted to, he was trying to avoid things in his life that was his reality.
Yep.
So a lot of times people are grinding because they want to avoid what's going on in their everyday life. They could go to work, but they don't want to deal with what's going on at home.
Yes, and we've been programmed to do that. Like, what was one of the first questions we were asked as a child? What do you want to be when you grow up? Just immediately, like, why is that the first question we're asking kids? Number one, it was like programmed in us from a very early age to find refuge and value, self-worth in our work. And that's why, you know, viewing this as an addiction too is important. Of like, yeah, like sometimes we work too much and we know we do, but there's something about it too that it feels gratifying too, you know? And so just kind of, it's an interesting, complicated relationship, you know? Yeah, because there's a lot of great things we do with our work too, you know? And so there is value in it. And understanding that we're valuable with or without it, I think is the key. And that's the hard part.
Well, let's walk it back a little bit, because I remember Dr. Margaret. I love having these conversations every week because I can pull from some of the information that they said. And one of my conversations back in February, we were doing a month of love, and this was about self-love. And Dr. Margaret talked about personal identity and how we equate our personal identity to performance. And that's why people ask us that question about what do we want to be when we grow up, because that is that's performance based. A lot of our love that we received was based off of the way that we performed. And that is very much so when it comes to our brothers. Male children, a lot of times the love that's being displayed to male children is based in their performance. Whether they can play shoot a basketball in a hoop, whether they can throw a football or run a football down and get a touchdown, whether that they can, play baseball and hit a home run. It's based in performance. And because of that, they have this mentality like nobody's really going to pay attention to me unless I perform. So they grind. I don't know if you guys saw this video as of recent. It was a sister that was interviewing Shaq, and I was mortified. I don't know if you saw this video, but
I gotta watch this.
You gotta watch this video. She just interviewed him maybe a week ago. It's come out in the last week, and she said, I can't remember exactly the question, but she asked him something about being emotional, or, do you ever get a chance to cry? And he said he'd only cried 4 times. And that was when his grandmother died, when his sister died, when his stepfather died, and when Kobe died. He said, I don't have time to be emotional. He said, I have 2 women, his mothers of his children, his ex-wife, Shawnee, and then his first child's mother. He said, and I have however many kids he has. He said, I have so many people depending on me. I don't have time to cry. I don't have time to be emotional.
Wow.
Right? And all of the comments were, oh my God, he's really working hard for his family, and he's really doing all this thing for his family. And my comment was, I am saddened by this, because here this man in this big stature who has put all of his worth in his performance and making sure that he's responsible for all of these people. And he doesn't think enough of himself to think that he needs to put himself first. Because guess what? If he goes down, what happens? Yeah, the money might still be there, but he'll be gone. And it
Right.
happens with our brothers so much so when they don't put themselves first, it ends up in early deaths.
Yeah.
They die from heart attacks very early. They have health issues very early because they don't think of themselves, because they grew up under this performance-based love that they're supposed to perform for us.
Yeah.
And that they're grinding for us. Something about that is so sad to me.
It's dehumanizing. He's not allowing himself to feel that, that human emotion. And maybe it's worked for him. I don't know his life like that. And yeah, I think it is sad. I think it's a little sad too, and also, come on, if he goes and takes a little break, the world will not end. That's the thing too. It's like the world won't end if we take a break. We want to think it will, but it won't. It'll be cool,
Why do we feel guilty? Because I can admit, and this is just my own thing, sometimes I feel guilty in resting or taking a break or taking a vacation. I feel like, I work a full time. I'm a consultant, so I'm grinding it out there. I'm, getting Heal Black Joy off the ground. So, and my daughter has to remind me, like, Mommy, take a break, go rest,
Mm-hmm.
go to sleep, go do something, let's go for a walk, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly thinking like I gotta be doing something. Why do we
Mm-hmm.
feel guilty when it comes to just, I need to rest?
Well, one of my thoughts is not like super popular, because I feel like folks, like, we kind of know it, but it's not. It's like a womp womp, which is like our phones, the tech, the social media, right? The pings, the constant notifications. It's like we this is like how we do our business, and this is how we communicate with folks all around the world. So there's an amazing blessing for it, and being able to turn off, like, it starts not feeling natural because we're on these devices. And then also you have the sleep gap. So we have a racialized sleep gap in our country. So it's shown that Black, Latinx individuals and Native American folks are getting less sleep on average than the average white American. And that's because of things like shift work, it depends, like working odd hours, working in the gig economy, that sort of thing. And then it's also just that trauma around, like, if you don't sleep, you don't eat. That's a common conditioning that, folks who come to me, they got that in their childhood. If you don't eat, but if you don't work, you don't eat.
If you don't work, you don't eat.
You don't work, you don't eat.
It's all of these constructs that were passed down to us, and they're beliefs, and they've been embedded in us. And I can hear somebody in the back of my mind saying, Lola, you got to be working, you got to be doing something. Like, I love my mother, but my mother does not know how to rest.
Yeah.
Like, she would have to get sick, ill, for her to sit down. She feels like she is supposed to be doing something at all times. And even at her tender age of 82, I went home for Mother's Day, and she was just washing dishes and cooking.
Oh,
and I'm like, Mom, sit
yeah.
down. It's okay. Like, this is the time you get to rest, my love. Right? But it's something that she's just been doing all of her life. And it's something that our counterparts do it. I do it. I don't know anybody that doesn't do it, because they were raised just like I was raised. Right? So I think this next generation, what we have to teach them is that they're worthy of rest. Like, rest is your birthright.
Yes.
Rest is your birthright. What else could we be doing to detach ourselves from the thought process of the grind culture? How do we detox from the grind culture?
That's where wellness comes into play. It's one thing to have the intellectual knowing of, like, okay, I'm working too much, I need to slow down, I need to rest. But you know, when we do slow down, when we do take that 5 minutes sometimes to meditate, or we take that, you know, we lay down and we to take that nap, there's this mental battle that we go through about why we shouldn't be doing this. We should be checking our email for this. We should be doing that. You know, all the thoughts, all the anxieties come up. So being able to retrain our brains through tools like meditation and mindfulness. Sound healing is really great. So I'm a sound healer. I do a lot of work with crystal singing bowls, because for folks, I'm not somebody who has typically been somebody who could meditate. Like, if you would have been telling me I would be teaching mindfulness, you know, 3-4 years, I would have been like, what? You know, that's not me, you know. But the sound healing helps to slow me down. So if you're somebody who, you know, like the anxious thoughts come, you know, I've had high functioning anxiety most of my adult life. Like, it's just been a part of my reality. But the singing bowls, that can slow you down. It just helps you get into that vibration of stillness. So that's why that stuff matters. It's like bringing that in, the yoga, right? You know, doing the little micro yoga breaks. You don't have to do a full yoga class, even like a 10-minute stretch. That could take you a long way, you know, crystals, like just different things to remind you that you are more than what you produce, you know, like beautifying your workspace, like these sorts of things that just reminds you of like not just production, but like what's the process of life, you know. And so if we can have more spaces for wellness at work, then we will have more opportunities to tend to our humanity, you know. It won't be this battle. Sometimes it just feels like it's this fight sometimes, you know, to
Right.
carve out.
I've seen where some corporations are starting to implement, like, you know, yoga, some mindfulness. They're doing some, you know, maybe some massages, chair massages that'll come in. People will come in and do chair massages. So yeah, I see that coming in in some areas in corporations. What do you do, like to center yourself? What are some of the things that you do that help you detach or detox from the grind that you've been a part of personally?
So I'm somebody who, I don't like routine a lot of times. I like to mix it up. So it depends on the season that I'm in. So like this season, something I'm doing that I'm really proud of, you know, those little mandala coloring books, you know, those little intricate
Yeah.
books. Man, a few years ago, I could have never completed one of those. It was
Really?
stressful, you know. But I started doing them, and I'm like, I'm actually completing them now. So just like if I need a screen break, you know, and I just want, you know, just go back to the paper and the pen and just like, you know, using color, seeing patterns, it just helps to kind of keep that creative, joyful part of yourself alive. Reading, like taking little breaks to read, you know, it's hard to just go through a full book these days, but you know, just one of my favorite books, taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes to read something inspiring,
Mm-hmm.
uplifting, you know, making smoothies. So it just depends. So yeah, I'm really into smoothies right now. Really into teas, flower arranging. So like bringing flowers into the space. Yeah, just kind of finding like what brings you joy and doing that, like making that time for it, you know. Most people,
Creation,
yeah,
the
yeah,
creativity that brings joy, because we're
mm-hmm,
here to create. That's what we're
yeah,
here to do. And
mm-hmm,
I love that. I love all of those things that you're talking about. My daughter has been doing in the last few months, where
really,
yeah, she's been doing flower arrangements. I'm talking about things that you would literally want to buy in a store. She's done
mm,
some She did an arrangement for me for my birthday, and I literally thought she bought it at a store. I did.
yeah,
At a flower shop. I really did. And she was like, "No, I made this." I was like, "What?"
mm-hmm,
Like, I was so shocked that she made it, and it was just absolutely beautiful. So I totally identify with what you're talking about. I think for me, I would say for me is just resting, like
mm-hmm,
taking a break, going in my room, cutting everything off, and
mm-hmm,
closing my eyes and trying to meditate. Most times when I'm trying to meditate in those moments, I'll fall asleep because I just haven't gotten enough rest.
mm-hmm,
But resting for me is
yeah.
good. I've been cooking, you know, just like
Ooh,
trying to learn different recipes. Cooking for me works. Um, Going for walks has
Yes.
been my therapy. Going for walks has totally been my therapy. But I haven't been able to walk. I just started back walking because I was walking, and this is when you know you're grinding. I was coming back from a walk. I was walking almost 6 miles every single day, and I was coming back from a walk, and my Microsoft Teams went off, and I knew it was my job. I was like, okay, somebody's sending me a message, right? And I'm looking at my phone, and I don't realize there's this unleveled pothole that's there.
Oh no!
Right,
Yeah.
closed. It's closed, but within seconds, I was down, and I sprained a ligament in my foot. And it was on a Thursday, and I did a show, and I put my foot up. I iced my foot and everything. And when I went to go put my foot down, I fell down like a baby deer, like walking for the first time, because I didn't realize, because the adrenaline had kicked in, I didn't realize I had hurt myself in that moment. But it was because I was grinding. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't present in the moment. Even though I was walking, I was not present in the moment. That's very key too. Mindfulness allows us to get back to presence.
Yes.
Does
And
that
to ourselves too, because yes, therapy. Like, let's all get therapy, and let's be real these days. You book the appointment. You gotta wait for the availability to happen. Like, what about in that moment, right? Like
when you need somebody to talk
right?
to. Yeah.
Like, having the tools within us to self-regulate. That's a game changer,
Yeah. Let's get into this book of yours that is coming out in June. Talk to us about the Grind Culture Detox.
Well, yeah, it's wild. It's definitely, I feel like they're my little book babies, it was a very personal experience. So the book is about my personal journey with grind culture. When I understood, I needed to kind of make a shift, the process I went through, and then, the process I started to help others take others through. And then also I was able to interview colleagues that are doing amazing things in the wellness field. So it's like each chapter is kind of talking about some of the things that are in my, what I call like a thriving toolkit. So, one chapter is on plant allies, using the plant world to detox from grind culture, going outside, taking those walks. And then, another chapter is on sound healing and somatics and yoga. Another chapter is on like the importance of honoring our ancestors, healing our ancestral line. So just these different ways and how to bring that into the workspace. And yeah, just kind of breaking it down. Like, I think it's really important. Like, I'm in the wellness space, and what I don't see enough in the wellness space is a talk around race and equity, especially since a lot of these wellness practices that we're using have African origins, African and indigenous origins.
Yeah.
And I'm that a lot. I'm seeing a lot of times where I'm, one of the few folks of color in the room, whether it's, the digital room or the, the in-person room. And it's like, I'm done with this, like, like this is like also ancestral wisdom being packaged to us as something that's inaccessible. So it's very much, it wasn't just me writing it. It was also like being like led by my ancestors. And, yeah, because I do think it's like rest is our birthright. I agree. And I think that we rest too for our ancestors who were not able to, when I think about all that they went through, so a lot didn't make it either, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because when we think about our ancestors and, if we know some of their stories, I love how now we're getting back to our culture, getting back to some of the practices, getting back to, making, our drinks and potions that help us heal our bodies.
Yes.
Just getting back to those things that are indigenous to us, in a sense, and not just taking on a belief system that we had to adopt because it was passed down, it was passed down, and it was projected
Mm-hmm.
thought like you're going to do this because the people before you did it. And we're now recognizing our worth and our power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, we're being empowered by it. And that's what's bringing us joy. I think that we will get back to our family structure again. I think we're getting back to communal, communal gatherings again, where we come together when it comes to sharing of our resources and sharing our expertise and, just sharing in our power, because we need each other. We don't want to pit ourselves against each other. We actually need each other
Mm-hmm.
in this time. What else are you working on besides releasing this wonderful book of yours that's coming out June 14th?
Well, that's a good question. So a couple things. I run a workplace wellness community. So it's a monthly subscription for folks who are at different points of their journeys in the workplace. So some are trying to leave the 9 to 5. Some are, they want to stay in the 9 to 5. They want different skills, but it's a learning community where we support each other. We hold each other accountable with our workplace wellness goals, boundary setting, visioning for the future. So if this is, if you're looking to get out of the grind and you're seeking some tools, resources, and a community, that's something that you can always reach out to me about. And then also I work with one-on-one clients too, folks who are, running organizations or, in managerial roles, and they're seeking tools to work smarter and not harder, and to value their humanity and their staff's humanity. That's it. And, just kind of like living my life, doing my Grind Culture Detox thing,
Living your life like it's golden.
Exactly.
That's
to me.
Yes. I love it. So I always ask the people that I interview, because I had our community in mind when I created Heal Black Joy. So I like to ask, what does Heal Black Joy mean to you?
It means being empowered in yourself and being unapologetic about who you are, and doing so in a way that is respectful to others and at the same time is respectful to yourself,
Yeah.
Honoring yourself.
Honoring yourself. Yeah. Getting to the joy. That's my blueprint. Like, let's get to the joy, because I think when we get to the joy, and I say this all the time, when we start getting to the joy and we unpack all of the baggage of the trauma, that's where the love is. That's where the goodness is. That's where the confidence is. That's where alignment is. That's where alignment is. So all the things that people are looking for and searching for, when you're in alignment with yourself and you're in alignment with the because you're in alignment.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Okay. I can hear you now. You cut out. I don't know if it was me or you though, but you cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. I just think that's where alignment brings you into the space of joy, into the space of peace, into the space of love. And that's just where the goodness is for everybody. So that is why I created Heal Black Joy in this space, because I wanted us to get to that place. It's a journey, but I believe that we can get there with having conversations like this with you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the warm and welcoming community that you've created. I just really like the vibe of Heal Black Joy, and it's just a great way to build community and to have some conversations that are like kind of difficult to have, and just doing so in a way that feels light.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you for your time. I appreciate you for your work. I appreciate you for your expertise in coming on to share with our Heal Black Joy tribe, because I think, if we can start having these conversations that we don't have all the time, somebody can see you and they can recognize themselves in the things that you're saying, or somebody can see me and recognize themselves in the things that I'm saying. And that means everything to me. That means that we're changing, maybe hopefully, the trajectory of what they're trying to do. If they don't have the confidence to say, you know what, I need to change some things that's going to benefit my life and benefit the lives of my family and the people that I love. If they can look at us and see that we're doing it and we're, having these difficult conversations, maybe it'll give them the inspiration to do it too.
Yes, I think it will.
Yeah. So I appreciate you for coming on tonight. I also appreciate, as always, my Heal Black Joy tribe that tunes in on Thursdays every night. Thank you, guys. And until next time, we will see you next week. Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.